Good morning friends, welcome back to the channel. This is a bit of an update video because I realized that I've been gone since last week, like 7-10 days, and I wanted to explain like why and where. And I know that that's not a very long time, but in the world of like social media and uploads and all the rest of it, that is quite a long time. So even if this video is just short, I want to let you know that I'm okay, and I hope you are too. However, last week we did go away on a little short break. We went to Lanzarote, myself and Charlie, completely without the bikes. I know that might sound weird, but yeah, it was actually a very nice, well-deserved break for both of us, if I'm honest. More so for Charlie than for me. But after the Zwift World Championships, or the Esports World Championships, I did sort of plan to have a bit of a break anyway. So we went away 5 days, all-inclusive. My first ever all-inclusive, which I certainly made up for. But then coming back, like the day before we flew back, which was like Friday, I started to get a little bit ill. Had like a bit of a tickly cough and like, you know, the usual sort of cold symptoms. We had a very late night flying back, like extremely late night. We didn't get to bed until like 2:30 in the morning. And as usual, because I'd spent the whole week without my bike, I wanted to get out on my bike the next morning with the group. So I got up early after like 5 hours of sleep, got on the bike, and then just had a really chilled like 3-hour ride with the group, which was really nice. However, the next day, I didn't feel so good. And as you can probably hear in my voice, I am ill. And I've actually tested positive for that virus that spread around the world really rapidly. And say what you want about it, like, it's knocked me for 6 again. So I've virtually now had like every day off since like the World Championships. So I'm a little bit on edge to get on the bike again, but I know that you know, with my experience, it's so easy for me to just take time off because I know how quickly things come back, as long as you take your time and everything else, that I'm in no rush to like get back on the bike. And I wanted to talk a little bit about, like, obviously I'm feeling better today than I was a couple of days ago. I've not had any, like, you know, snot or like bad cough or anything. It's just been fatigue, and it's the same as when I had it a couple of years ago. Just fatigue. It feels like I've ridden back from Lanzarote. Like, that's what it feels like. So I'm actually recovering now. Thank you for asking. When do you take time off, or like how to take time off, and how I deal with it? Because I know that there's people out there who, you know, might have had this virus and they've just carried on riding through it. There's also people who just have a common cold, you know, or cough or whatever, and they just keep riding through it. Some people like me just take time off the bike. I know that there's a lot of people who are in a similar boat to me, so making a video where I just talk about my experience is probably the best thing I could do. And obviously I'm not a doctor, but as usual, like, the videos on my channel, they follow along on my journey. It's almost like a blog or like diary entry of like both highs and lows, and the idea of bringing you like content that's quite relevant to the situation is very appropriate right now. And the first thing I ask myself is, like, do I actually need time off? How far away am I from like my goal or like my ideal peak level of fitness? And actually, when I look at it in my situation now, I'm quite a way away from anywhere that I need to be. So taking time off, even if it's just a week, which again might seem really long to some people and kind of like really mess with your head sometimes, but a week is nothing. You know, it's 52 weeks in a year. 1 week is nothing at all. And if anything, that little bit of freshness and that giving yourself that little bit of extra time to recover will actually speed things up 9 times out of 10. The hardest bit is actually just stepping away from the bike. That's the hardest bit. But like I said, you know, I've been doing this now for 12 years, and it's just become easier and easier every year to take that time away, because I know that it pays off in the long run. On the flip side though, you know, if you're that much closer, if you're in the middle of a build period, and you're that much closer to an event. Unfortunately, the chances are that if you take time off, you're definitely not going to be as fit for that event than if you were to be, you know, miles away from it and you have a chance to rebuild again. It's just something you have to accept, unfortunately. But it is something that, like, as long as you can accept, a lot of this, when it comes to being ill or being injured, a lot of it is like your ability to deal with it up there as opposed to dealing with it physically. And that's just something that, you know, you have to kind of come to terms with. When I'm ill or when I'm injured, the one thing I do consistently is monitor my sleep. Not so much like tracking, you know, with a Whoop or with, you know, a Garmin watch or anything like that, or heart rate variability. I wake up in the morning and I just assess my sleep there and then. Like, how well rested do I feel? How well did I sleep? How long did I sleep for? Just check to see roughly how long I've been in bed. And like, I don't sit there, I don't scroll on my phone, you know, before I fall asleep or when I wake up in the morning. So like the time I go to bed, I generally fall asleep pretty quickly. But then I wake up, you know, I don't like doze and things. I literally just wake up and that's the time I get up out of bed. So like I just assess it, and usually when my sleep is like really good and I know that I've had a good night's sleep and I've been consistent with that, then that's like the first step on the ladder of like being able to say I'm getting back to where I was pre-illness or pre-injury. One of the most important things to do, obviously, when you get back into cycling again is to reassess and reevaluate where you are. You have to be extremely critical of potentially any fitness loss, and don't pay any attention to, like, you know, the performance chart on like Training Peaks or anything like that that tells you like you've lost 20 or 30 points off your fitness number, because that's irrelevant. Because you could go out the next day and you could smash a 1 minute effort and you could actually do a PB 1 minute effort, because that's how fitness and freshness works. Like, it's just a number that measures load at the end of the day, and obviously because you haven't been riding, there's no load there. So what I would say is, like, just go out and ride your bike for at least a week where you feel like you're progressing and you're able to do a bit more every day. You're starting to feel better. That's your like most basic measurement there, is if you're feeling better on the bike every day, then that's a tick in the box. So do that and then see, okay, like, what can I progress from there? And then within a week to 2 weeks, you're gonna know, like, almost like off the top of your head, how far away are you from, like, am I capable of riding FTP for 20 minutes? Am I capable of riding, you know, close to like my 5 minute best or like 30 watts below it? You can start to make assumptions without actually pushing yourself sometimes. So yeah, be a bit clever about it. Your goals might need to be adjusted because of the time you've had off, and it all depends on how long you've had off. Like, if you've only had like a week, 10 days, 2 weeks off, then potentially you don't have to move things around. But if you've had longer, like you're talking a month or even longer than that, potentially you're gonna have to start thinking about, like, how do I adjust my goals or finishing times for events or whatever it may be. Now, I'm not a nutritionist, I don't play one on the internet, but I'm actually fascinated to hear of people's rituals when they're ill, because, you know, one of the things when you're ill is that you try to eat as healthy as possible. I think whenever I'm ill, particularly, I'm like, I go completely tunnel vision on, like, I need to get, you know, turmeric in, I need to get like ginger in, I need to eat like all the fruits and vegetables, like even more so than when I'm not ill. Like, I make a very big effort to do that, and really I should do it all the time, like not just when I'm ill. And I'm like okay with owning up to that, and I'm sure like there's more people than just me who are like that as well. But I'm always curious as to, like, you know, what people do differently when they're ill. Like, do they take different supplements? Like, personally, I very rarely take a multivitamin, but I do when I'm ill. And I also take vitamin D supplement when I'm ill. And I do sometimes when I'm not ill, but not as regularly as when I'm ill. So these are like almost like rituals. But I'm curious to know, like, if any of you do anything differently when you're ill. So I guess, like, what you do with all this free time when you're ill. So let's say, for argument's sake, like, you train like 7 to 10 hours a week. Like, what are you gonna do with all this spare time now that you're gonna take a week off the bike? Well, I personally like to dream. I like to dream up new routes. I like to dream up like new climbs, or like weird goals that potentially have like no bearing on like technically anything that's measurable. Like, you know, if I have like a 60-kilometer pan flat loop around here, and I'm like, oh, I've always wondered, like, you know, if I rode in the drops all the way around that route at 200 watts, I wonder how fast I'd be able to do that route versus riding, you know, on the hoods with my arms bent at 90 degrees. Like, almost like weird, like very basic aerodynamic testing. But like, it gives me like food for thought. And I start to come up with these like ideas and these weird routes. And like, if I want to do like a 7-hour ride, I'm like, oh, where am I going to go for 7 hours? Like, is there any cafes that I can call into that I've never been to before? Like, all this kind of stuff that I would probably never plan for, because I would just be going from session to session to session. I've now got like 7 to 10 hours to like just sit back and go like, oh, like I could actually do something different like when I get back into training, and it gives me something to look forward to. So I think, to conclude, you know, we're all individuals and we all deal with them differently, and illness and injuries. So it's usually a question of like just taking your time, assessing like where you are, like in terms of your goals, how far away, how close, and all that type of stuff. So personally, I just think it's a case of just taking your time and dealing with it up here more so than anywhere else, and looking after yourself. So hopefully by the end of this week, I'll be able to turn some pedals again. And when that happens, there'll be another video. So I will see you then. Thank you so much for watching. Leave a like, please subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.